Welcome to the Christopher Peter Review, your source for an economic perspective on salient current events impacting our public policy, our economic outcomes, and our overall society. I am generally concerned about the number of people in America, especially our youth, who believe that the American dream no longer exists. Our national ethos instills in every American that with hard work, ambition, and personal responsibility that we have the opportunity to be whoever we want to be. That is what drives greatness in our American economy. But there are many people who are living at home with their parents at ages where their parents were able to be homeowners without the level of college debt and income insecurity they may be personally experiencing. So, their situation will make them feel like the American dream is not for them, and they commiserate with like-minded people that echo the false sentiment. I can empathize with the reasoning why some people may feel that way, but I cannot accept their conclusions that are drawn from short-sighted hysteria and the lack of comprehensive analysis of how this vital concept has adapted over time. As anything in life, things change over time because the environmental factors cause shifts. Innovations in technology, shifts in preferences by the general public, or access to resources can all alter how we operate as a society, economy, and individual. What was known in the moment may change over time, opening doors for new paths that require modernization by those walking those paths. What worked for our parents and grandparents may not work for us because we are not living in their world, which could be both better and worse in certain aspects. Their lives may appear easier than ours because people tend to not share the complete picture. Even if they dramatize their hardships, it is still much different, and it will be different for the next generation. Too many people feel like there should be guarantees in life, which there are none. We all have to operate in the environment we are in and make choices each and every day that either advance our needs, wants, or interests, and avoid creating obstacles in between. The decisions are different. There may be different obstacles that we must overcome, but also different opportunities that exist now and in the future that past generations were not privy to. Does the American dream really exist? Yes, it does, but it is different than in the past. To truly see the reality of the American dream, I think you should look at the many inspiring stories from legal immigrants who come to the United States to become Americans and become successful entrepreneurs. Many come with little to nothing in their name, no ability to benefit from a Rolodex of contacts from their parents or social networks. But they are willing to work at growing their business endeavors because in their mind they have no other choice. There is no ability to accept a no. They have to accept the challenge to find a path to a yes and do it over and over. In our modern society, it is hard for people to accept the challenge of being better and compete for opportunity.
I think there is a bit of a shift in terms of economic pursuits. There are still a plurality of Americans who believe in opportunity and forging their own path in life. People still want to be perceived as self-made successes, viewed as overcoming adversity and personal obstacles. I think the challenge is that the pursuit appears much more difficult than what they perceive their parents and grandparents to have faced. When their parents and grandparents were probably in much more dire environments, where failure was not an option and there were no safety nets that were available, like remaining at home. Sometimes perception clouds reality, especially in an environment where more people grew up in middle-class environments. People complain about the cost of major life expenses being much higher than in the past. Yet, they ignore the fact that salaries and career opportunities were far more limited than it is now. And the side hustle was usually the main hustle for most people back then. Not saying that it is not outrageously expensive for what you actually get nowadays, but there are always reasons to count your blessings rather than downplay the struggles of the past.
I think there is some legitimacy in being concerned with the cost of a college education, housing, retirement, childcare and education, and taxation without believing that it is the fault of the prior generation or feel that those individuals stole from you. That narrative is usually helpful in clouding the real factors of why these supposed institutions are eating away at your household budgets and you are getting far less in value than in the past. For instance, the cost of a college education is pretty excessive for many people, especially for those who are pursuing careers that will be impacted by changes in technology that will automate them out of need. There are always some fields that are more volatile than others, and shifts in society and the economy that will make once career-safe fields more vulnerable. The cost of college degrees will continue to rise not because of generational grift, but poor public policy that does not manage costs effectively. The beneficiary should bear the cost of the benefit that they will directly receive, but there have been many measures to make college more accessible by making it more expensive. Many college students or their parents are not completely aware of what the bottom line cost of college actually is, and factor in the interest accrued on student loans, the assortment of fees, and housing costs that are conveniently not always addressed. More importantly, Colleges and universities generate costs that students have to bear. For instance, I went to a university where you paid for full-time tuition of at least 12 credits a semester, but you were not charged for additional credits taken. You could take up to 20, a good way to potentially graduate early or take classes that are not part of your program. Nothing in life is free. At the end of the day, there are costs of those additional credits that will not be borne by the student creating the need, costs that will eventually require tuition for everyone to go up. And you can imagine that would encourage more people to load up to leave early and the cycle would continue. For past generations, neither college nor student loans were accessible as they are today. A good thing, but there is a need to address the cost generation. When you try to constantly find ways to divert cost or deflect responsibility, it just encourages a continued path towards the current state where people have to weigh the benefit of college educations against the cost and the value of other pursuits. The market will eventually correct if public policy is updated, as we are seeing more people shifting to trade careers that are paying more than some college-based positions without the burden of debt. Also, people are shifting to online programs, sometimes sacrificing quality for savings if the institution is not associated with an accredited institution.
For some people, their view of what the American dream is might have to be refreshed with the times. If you want to be an accountant because you come from a long line of accountants, then you may have to choose a career path that infuses technology with accounting principles. The same for housing. Everyone has the dream of having a 4-bedroom house, 2-car garage, and a backyard with a pool, swing set, and plenty of space. Depending on where you live, you may have to find a nice apartment complex with great amenities or condo community. To some degree, Americans are having to reshape their dreams to fit what the reality of the environment is, which may be a reason why people can grow disillusioned with the idea that an American dream still exists.
I think we as people always expect things to be somewhat linear. If I do this action or make this choice, then this reward should result in this time. But timing can be different for each person. And I think people become discouraged when they are a person who did not get the desired outcome at the desired time. Some people will get over that initial disappointment and realize that it can still happen and evaluate and innovate. For instance, I was listening to Joe Rogan and comedian Bert Kreischer, who spoke about creating a successful comedy event because no one gave him a chance to perform at theirs. He created his success by innovating his approach rather than sulking. We are also cultured that we should be a cog in a corporate system or an organization like government or academia, when our American dream may be entrepreneurship, creating new products or services, or providing something of entertainment value. So many people may view themselves incorrectly in the framework of how well they are performing in the preferred path rather than finding their own path. During my time in finance, I remember working with a person who was viewed as complacent. He was genuinely quiet and was not obsessed like some about climbing the corporate ladder. What many people did not understand was that he had his own ventures. He did not need the job. It just helped him have access to the market data to make him better in both fields. While people viewed him as complacent, he was more financially stable than anyone there, including the people above all of us. Many years after I left the firm, it was sold and the division was eliminated. He did not feel the sting, but many who viewed him as complacent hurried to take lower titles just to be able to maintain their bill cycle. He was able to make his ventures a full-time endeavor.
The impact of economic groupthink meets the blue ocean strategy. Many of us judge each other based on what title they hold and the salary they make, which are important. These pay your bills, provide for your household, and protect your future. But I think it is important to look beyond that when we see each other. There are many people who judge incorrectly each and every day because they are not what the elite would consider on the right path. Yet, those elite lack the correct perspective. How many times do we see people that may appear to be one thing and are completely another? Like you may see someone as just this or just that, but they are actually the owner or our sole proprietor, making them more career stable than you. Society patterns our thinking, which is why we may feel certain ways about things when we do not feel like we are getting what we think is fair. But instead of falling into the class warfare trap or generational jealousy trap, realize that you still have opportunities. You just have to improve your ability to identify them and take advantage when they arrive. The question for some may be how.
Life does not stop teaching us the critical lessons we need when we complete our formal education. Each day we can learn new information that can make us a better worker, a better leader, a better friend, a better sibling, or better parent. We just need to be willing to be better each day. And if we are intellectually curious and open to true lifelong learning, we can learn from the experiences of others. Learning and understanding the path of others can help avoid the obstacles and pitfalls they experienced, and help make our pursuits more efficient and effective. We can glean from successes as well. Part of learning is realizing that opportunities generally do not knock on your door. Sometimes, you must go out and create them. At times, we must see what no one else does to advance our own cause and interests. Find competitive advantages or areas of innovation to create value to elevate our economic outcomes. Our situation may push us to be more resilient because we no longer can accept failure. I am a firm believer in the importance of mindset. People succeed not just because of their technical abilities, but because they are able to remain persistent to turn a no into an eventual yes and being able to cultivate what others may walk away from. So let us talk about a mindset that may be helpful in our daily lives regardless of what our station in life is. Whether we are a leader of an organization, line worker, new hire, or stuck in neutral, we can change our outlooks to at the very least cultivate opportunity for the next step or choice in life. As a personal investor, I enjoy trying to find opportunities to grow my financial picture by identifying strategies and investments that can perform better even only slightly than the market. As an economist, I do like reading market data to find the next opportunity. So why not take lessons from both to find ways to effectively and efficiently find a viable path to better tomorrows? Now, my pursuit in investing was not to become the next Warren Buffett, although I would not say no if it did lead me to that path. But it was to enable me early in my career to grow my finances without having to spend every waking moment at my daily job and other places of employment. So, I decided to take money I saved, and bonuses earned and started my investment fund, which led me on a path to being able to pay off my debts and help partially fund my advancements in my education down the line. The most important part is not the outcome, but the lessons I learned as I pursued enhancing skills needed to be successful in investing. As I was trained as an economist, I had the financial and ability to read business data down. But I did have to learn about strategy. Economic analysis gives you some insight into how a company is performing, which is important. But past performance is not always a complete indicator of future performance. There are things companies do to boost near-term results that are not representative of the actual situation. Remember Sears? So I had to learn to think and operate like an investor to be able to manage my own investment fund. Additionally, I learned that many of the skills and mental frameworks can be applied outside of investing, and that is what I'm going to talk about. First, let us talk about opportunity from the eyes of an investor. Many people see opportunity from what is already done. For example, the invention of the iPad spurred the transition of the tech industry beyond just the personal computer. To be historically accurate, there is a business case that I believe stated that it may have been Kodak that may have invented the first tablet computer to no avail. Apple, as the investor and developer of the iPad, saw what Kodak did not see. They saw the ability to market it not as a computing device, but as a lifestyle necessity. Although I generally do not use Apple products, I will give them credit for really being the first company that went beyond creating products for the sake of technology but developing products to solve a real need for consumers. That is why they have been marketing geniuses for so long. The lesson is to see beyond the superficial and obvious and discover ways to apply what is there to new areas of opportunity, which is something many will need in the age of artificial intelligence. Consider how we look for career opportunities. Many of us search for jobs by simply looking for opportunities that match our skills and interests. But there are those with the ability to stand out in the field by elevating conversations with hiring managers to touch on what the value this position can create and what their skill set may be able to contribute. I know people who have interviewed and placed in better positions than the one applied for simply because they were able to impress decision makers by speaking to the bigger picture and what the true one is. They may be hiring for a position, but what they want is not just the job description. As an economist, I understand the inner workings of industries and the economic system as whole. With my MBA, I learned to be able to see from a strategic point of view how a company should operate and to measure results against industry standards. Combining both skill sets with my investor perspective, I aim to quantify or value whether the performance is valuable or burdensome. In our careers, it is important to independently understand the performance of our respective employers in their markets. Where they rank in the market, what is their brand position, and are they operating in the best possible manner given their set of constraints? Not every company can be a market leader. Some may serve niche markets, but all should be focused on profitability and efficiency. You do not have to be an investor to learn how to identify these opportunities. Each day, you identify things you believe your organization could be doing or should be doing. You see the good and the bad of your organization. Compare information against your nearest competitor. Consider the benefit of being the person that presents the needed changes in a professional manner and accepts the responsibility to drive positive change. When I began my journey as an investor, I was working for a family-owned distribution company. I saw the passion they had for delivering for the clients, but also the soft spot they had for poor-performing employees that either were close to the family or at some point lost motivation. They had trouble holding people accountable and it showed in their margins. At some point, I left for a competitor that was owned by a venture capital firm, and it was completely different. Margins mattered. Performance metrics determined staff retention, and negotiations had a set minimum profit margin that must be attained or the agreement would go nowhere. Evaluating the differences is important beyond just the perception of work environment. While loyalty is important, allowing poor performers to remain in that same state was a drag on growth. Therefore, the ability to reward good performance was constrained by the constant need to compensate clients for the mistakes, while the competitor was able to invest in growth of operations and their employee skill sets. While you may like the people you work with, enjoy the work you do, and feel valued, you should know if there are threats to the situation that exist. Can you help avoid those threats and find solutions for your organization? Can you find gaps in the market that your company should be taking advantage of? Or should you find a way out before you go down with the ship? All valid concerns. If the decision is the latter, it is not an easy decision. There are always reasons to feel like you should stay, but you must remember that you are trying to be best version of you. If there is a disconnect between your needs and wants and the direction of your department or the company, then you need to address that at some point. At the very least, you need to understand that it exists, and that there is an opportunity to make an impactful decision. Sometimes our need is to advance our career. We all believe to some degree that we could run the company better in some ways than the person at the top, but we also realize that it may not be a reality. While the title of chief executive may not be the next one you can attain, without starting your own business, then you can evaluate the job market for opportunities that exist for a person with your skill set and what career tracks there are. If there is a gap in skill set, then you need to determine how to close that gap. As an investor, you have to be willing to invest in assets that can make your tomorrows better than your today, and be able to reasonably know that the investment will more likely pay off than not. Advancing your education can be an investment that can pay off if you see it as a requirement that stands between you and the next level of your profession. At times, we feel that some obstacles are insurmountable, but sometimes they are not as daunting if you look at the challenge and break it down into smaller decisions and tasks. Do you invest in yourself may require you to determine what that investment may look like, what the cost range could be, and what alternatives may exist. If you are not willing to invest in yourself, then it is not reasonable to expect anyone else to. But you can also invest in yourself in a manner that provides the most effective and efficient return possible. Sometimes, it may just be having the courage to discuss the issue and be willing to engage with those who could advance your interests. I find it very interesting the number of people who want advancement in their respective employers, but have not even broached the subject with their direct supervisor. They have not even discussed what they can do to be more visible, been open to hearing how they can improve and be seen as a top performer. So many people work each day thinking that their leadership will one day have an epiphany that they should have a better role. Then they watch others advance simply because they have those conversations with their superiors and place themselves in that view as promotable. The best workers are not always the ones moving up. Sometimes simply having these conversations can find new solutions or resources available. Lean into the investor behavior in questioning anything and everything. Investors are willing to ask hard questions because those answers directly impact their potential investments. Even if you are not an institutional investor, you can still research information on assets or inquire with those who may have that information. You just must be willing to take that step. So if you decide that you need to advance your career and there may be gaps that exist, you need to discuss with your supervisor or senior management what opportunities are available, what resources are available to help you become a better trained employee, and how you can access them. Companies have programs but are not going to find people to spend money on if they do not have to. Sometimes you must make the case for yourself. What if the conversation does not go the way you expected? You thought your supervisor would be more supportive, but there is a clear difference between how you view your performance and how they view you. That is not a bad thing because at least you know where you stand and have another impactful decision point. Information is never really a bad thing, if you manage it properly. On one end, people may worry about the cost of leaving, the risk of starting over with a new organization, the potential of having to relocate, or what if you simply do not get a new job right away? What if the conversation creates angst between you and your boss? The manner you approach the conversation is important. If you make sure to show that you want to advance and become more of an asset rather than a threat to leave, then the response should not be adversarial even if it does not go your way. The worst thing a person could do is emotionally react and make a rushed decision. If the job and compensation are manageable today, then you can remain employed while you execute a plan. Sometimes you must be able to push through while aiming for a positive out. Use emotion as fuel and motivation, rather than an anchor. At one of my employers, our office was located not that far from Atlantic City, New Jersey, so there was a group of people that made trips down every Friday that was payday, and I was asked once why I did not participate. I replied that while I do like to gamble every now and then, I am currently doing my gambling in the market. I got the expected eye roll and weird looks. There is risk in investing. There is no denying that. Compared to gambling at a casino, I had at least the opportunity to mitigate risks and make up losses over time without pumping more money into a slot machine. I know some of them came out well on some of those trips, but it may have been a wash overall. Being able to mitigate risks in life is important. It is important in investing, and it is important in everyday life and in our careers. My goal in starting to invest was also so that I was not completely dependent on my employer. Many people live paycheck to paycheck regardless of the size of the check. I am naturally a saver but did not want my complete earnings to be coming from my employer. Or at least that was the goal. Diversify to dilute risks. But being paycheck to paycheck has risks that one must face as seeking change. That is why you can approach change in risk-averse manners. There are many people who stay in jobs they hate because they fear the perceived risks that may come with change. What if you do not get the position and you now have friction in your current employment? What if you have to uproot your family and relocate? What if you find the new is not as comfortable as the old? These are all valid risks that one legitimately would be concerned about, but all that you can plan for. Just like with an investment, you must do your research beyond financials. The more information you expose yourself to, the better you may understand the potential for the unknown, the better decision you will make. Read about prospective companies from a worker perspective. This requires discernment between relevant information and what may merely constitute a personal complaint expressed online. Companies are not going to tell you that their staff do not like each other and their leadership is distant, but try to get a feeling of why people stay with the company. I think it is important to make sure that you leave a company in good grace regardless of how you may have been treated. If you were not willing to pursue a lawsuit, then maybe it was more emotional response-based than actuality. Most people do not land an offer after every interview or meeting. Personally, I always believed in being employed while looking for a new job. However, some people are exceptions. Also, I think it is important to understand your level of risk aversion and to have standards that you hold to be able to confidently turn down risk even when you become enamored with the potential benefit. Sometimes the gain is not worth the journey of getting there. One piece of good advice I gleaned from a discussion with a coworker during my time on the business side of a large health system was that people should have a time frame for each place of employment and determine whether it makes sense to leave or stay. Did you meet your objectives and are ready for the next challenge? Do you know what the next challenge really is? With every investment I make, I try to have a target profit I want to make. Once it surpasses that, I decide whether investment is one that can remain as a long-term asset or is it time to move on to the next opportunity. It is important to set aside emotions and make rational decisions based on facts, evidence, and data. Generally, I will assign an evaluation date for every asset along with a price alert. And I do that with my professional career as well. Besides my own, I try to determine how long I will partner with a company before moving on to another stop. Having points where you refresh your view of your current situation allows you to not obsess over the highs of a good day on the job and the strong desire to leave after a bad day, which neither may have been all that great or even as bad as you thought. Sometimes having time to properly reflect and weigh your options in an objective environment is important. All too often we may rush to judgment and make decisions we regret or miss opportunities because we did not take time to see the situation objectively. So let us recap a bit. The transferable skills that we can leverage from investors are their ability to identify opportunities previously unseen. Also, create valuations of your situation like investors make with assets to buy, hold, or sell. Understand if there is still alignment, opportunity to improve, or a need for change. Be strategic and well-timed with your decisions and plans of actions. If our goal is to make our tomorrows better than our today, then we need to find paths to the next step wherever we can find them. And investors have a useful perspective that we can leverage to advance our own situations and outcomes. The ability to make progress in fixing areas of our lives that we may find dissatisfaction in will not come through complaining and externalizing responsibility. It requires us to accept the accountability to be more strategic with our decision-making and processes in our daily lives. When you break it down into smaller steps and decisions, then you will see it really is not as insurmountable as it may seem. It really boils down to becoming more aware of your situation and understanding why you decided to be there. What options are available internally and externally regardless of whether you are willing to pursue them or not. Just because you are not willing to leave does not mean you should not be aware of what is out there. It may help you cultivate that same opportunity internally. One thing I try to tell myself every day is that I need to be willing to question everything and willing to hear the answer to my questions without preconditions. At the end of the day, I will gain better insight on my options and environment. Remaining in the dark does not help me or my stakeholders. I hope that I can inspire people to be bold and be their best. I wish for the best to all my fellow Americans and want to see everyone get more free, more prosperous and financially independent, and achieve their personal economic wishes.
This should be very helpful in protecting the American dream and aiding people to find their version of the dream for themselves and their future. There is a political aspect for those who seek to empower the government over the people, where it appears beneficial to make people believe that they do not have agency over their futures. As history has clearly shown us, nothing in life is free, even to the person receiving it. Everything given to you has a price. As with college funding, the price is a whole lot higher than if you simply took responsibility for yourself. Trading off short-term freedoms and inconveniences for long-term dependency and societal inefficiency is not a worthy trade. In this podcast, we discuss perspectives a great deal, because how we view the world and our situations is important. The frameworks that shape what decisions we believe are available to us can be misleading and purposefully manipulated. If we are not in our desired place in life and want our tomorrows better than our today, then we need to accept that we can impact our future and make decisions each and every day that move us closer to our goals, even if the gains are not linear and there are setbacks to overcome. Every success or failure starts somewhere. We do not always choose our start. Many times we choose our finish. Our goal is to discuss ideas that can make that finish a destination that you want to be. Thank you for experiencing this episode of the Christopher Peter Review. Your viewership is appreciated and valued. Please follow the Christopher Peter Review on social media and continue to visit www.crcreview.com for new episodes. Thank you once again. Until next time.